Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Executive Director, Puerto Rico Tourism Company, Carla Campos.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity of being here. I am honored and humbled to be here today to talk to you about the place that I call home. The place I call home is filled with beautiful landscapes and lush mountains and deep rivers and waterfalls. And we have virgin and pristine beaches that you really can't find anywhere else in the world. In addition to that, we have tropical rainforests, the most beautiful sunsets, and miles of sun and sand. And that place is Puerto Rico. And you probably don't associate those images with a Caribbean island, traditionally thought of as an all-inclusive destination region that is mainly out of sun and sand. And that's because Puerto Rico is magical. It's unlike other places, and it really inspired me to travel. It inspired me to get to know the world. And those adventures took me to Australia, where I lived for about a year. And in Australia, I also fell in love with those landscapes. I fell in love with the people. And I discovered a passion for travel and tourism as a force for good. I realized that through tourism, you could preserve those landscapes. Through tourism, you could change people's lives and improve a destination. So I decided to dedicate my career to tourism. And I went to GW and studied tourism administration. And after that, I decided to work in sustainable tourism. In Honduras, I met Aboriginal communities. In the Dominican Republic, I met people like Carolina. Carolina is a woman whose husband wasn't letting her work. She had a few kids, and she was supposed to stay home with her kids. But she really wanted for her life to mean something. So training Carolina and other women in that rural community to be artisans, to have a workshop and have a store in their communities that also had a daycare center where their kids could be while they improved their lives through tourism. I met and trained tour guides that lived in a place that was affected by severe deforestation. They were selling the trees for coal and using coal to cook. So how about we transform that, and how about we make you nature guides, and you show people your space, and you show people the cave systems that are within your community. I also got to do a lot of conservation, marine biology conservation. I also went to Mexico. And in Mexico, I worked with public and private sector stakeholders to work together to establish a vision for tourism development in Baja California Sur. How can we get people to work together to think of sustainable tourism for the future? And as I was doing all of that, I really yearned for the opportunity to do it back home. After 15 years of being abroad, I really felt that tourism could be a force for good in Puerto Rico as well. And that if I ever were to have an opportunity to come back home, I would seriously consider it. But things in Puerto Rico weren't looking that great. Our economy and our government is $74 billion in debt. We have a recession that has lasted about 10, 20 years. On top of that, immigration, about 500,000 people have left Puerto Rico in search of better opportunities over the last 10 years. Our population is dwindling, and it's becoming older, and people like myself are leaving for better opportunities. Record bankruptcies and jobs lost. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've lost about 40,000 jobs in the island. And stalling development. Our hospitality development is comprised of 15,000 rooms. And that's been the case for a very long time. There hasn't been significant new development to add to our inventory. In addition to that, Zika. All of a sudden, that mosquito arrived in Puerto Rico, and perception was severely affected, and consumers didn't really want to come to Puerto Rico. In addition, an identity crisis. Government is and was responsible for marketing the destination. But what was happening is that every 4 years, every time there was a new governor, or even within a same term, there was a new director of the Puerto Rico Tourism Company, the campaigns would change, and the brand would change, and everything would change. And we didn't have the time to position ourselves in a certain way in consumers' minds. And that identity crisis was severely affecting our tourism industry. And that was the scenario that I faced in 2016. In December 2016, I was on holidays in Puerto Rico, and I was approached by someone that I now admire a lot, and he told me, you know what, you should come back. And you saw that mess, so how was I gonna come back? And this person told me, you know what, there's a visionary leader who just got elected to be governor, and this person has a plan. And this plan includes the creation of a destination marketing organization that would basically make tourism marketing live outside of government and in an independent organization. And there's funding assigned to it. See, for years I had worked with DMOs and trying to get them to develop business plans in order to fund their operations. But they got caught up in this vicious cycle of generating revenues for their own livelihoods rather than doing the job they were tasked to do. So when someone tells me that there's new government, new leadership, young leadership, that wants to create the kind of organizations that I supported for a while, and that there's funding assigned to this, sign me up, I'm in. And that visionary leader was Governor Ricardo Rosselló, who's here with us today. So I signed up, and I moved back to Puerto Rico, and in January of 2017, we started rolling about significant changes. We had started working towards what that plan said. So in January, one of the first laws passed was Act 17 of 2017 that created this destination marketing organization that the private sector had been wanting for decades. And obviously, government didn't want to let go of significant budgets. We made it happen. We signed it into law, and we started to rethink competitiveness. So tourism was thought about, how can we market, how can we bring more people? But who was thinking about the management component? Who was thinking about planning adequately and about looking after that visitor's experience? And on top of that, in that transition period before the DMO was able to start its operations, we started implementing a consumer-centric and modern marketing discipline, a modern approach to revert that crisis I was talking to you about with Zika. All of a sudden, we started seeing great results. And by the summer of 2017, we had officially declared the end of the Zika epidemic. We had engaged the private sector in a way that the private sector hadn't been engaged before. They were excited about the idea of a DMO and also trusting government. We rolled out that digital and measurable marketing approach that all of a sudden had us thinking in terms of revenue management from the point of government. We were no longer buying those full-page ads in mainstream media. We were talking digitally to our consumers and convincing them to come to Puerto Rico. So we started reverting those downward trends, and we started seeing record-breaking revenues in terms of room tax. So room tax revenues in July and August were record-breaking. Never in the history of a July and August had Puerto Rico had generated so much money as a result of room tax. And this was all within 6 months. What we could do in 4 years' time, our imagination was going wild. But then, September 20th, 2017, is a day that is permanently marked in all of our hearts and minds. And that was the day that the second of two unwelcomed ladies by the names of Irma and Maria made landfall in Puerto Rico. And that was a day our lives changed forever. At that time, I quickly started working with my team in researching, well, what have other destinations done? What did New Orleans do after Katrina? What did New York do after 9/11? How about Detroit? How about all those other destinations that at some point in time had been hard hit? So about 5 days after the passing of the hurricane, we released a destination recovery plan. a plan that would take our destination through several phases: relief, rebuild, recover, and revamp. And while it was hard at that time to think about the opportunity to reimagine our tourism sector, at that point in time, we had learned from what other destinations had done and crafted this forward-thinking plan. And at that point in time, those first phases, we saw our industry come together like never before. JetBlue rolled out 100 by 35. In 100 days, they were going to do 35 things for the people of Puerto Rico. Royal Caribbean had Adventure of the Seas, basically taking people out of the island. Humanitarian flights from Delta, United, American. And Marriott opened its door to provide Wi-Fi in their lobbies when we had no communications. So we saw the spirit of the hospitality industry at its best. We saw how we could come together, and that was just a few days after the hurricane. So looking back, we had a specific milestone. We actually wanted to open ourselves for tourism just in time for our traditional holiday season, and that was December 20th. That destination recovery plan had us on a schedule. It had us on a messaging schedule. It had us on indicator schedules. We wanted to see progress, and by December 20th, we wanted to be open for tourism, and we did. On December 12th, we released a press release to the world that Puerto Rico officially declares it is open for tourism. And at that time, a lot of people were wondering, well, what we're seeing in the news is definitely not tourism related. We started engaging with people. Well, come, volunteer. See what we're doing here. Our hotels were open. Our attractions were open. Cruise ships were coming 2 weeks after the hurricane. But the world was seeing other images that we weren't seeing on the ground. And while recovery is still underway and there's a long-term recovery plan that needs to take place, I want to take you straight to where we are today. So where we are today is that 135 out of our 145 hotels are open for business. That's 90% of our total inventory. And the other 10% is actually very exciting because they are being remodeled. And legacy hotels that needed significant renovations had the opportunity to do it. On top of that, we closed the fiscal year with 1.2 million passengers. That's before and after the hurricane. We have 14 ships that were home porting in our ports this last January through June, and that was 4 more than the previous season. We have 110 daily flights. 2 weeks after the hurricane, we had 20. In addition to that, 4,000 restaurants all around the island are serving delicious food. And if you haven't tried Puerto Rican food, definitely encourage you to try some mofongo. It's my personal favorite. And 186 of our attractions and points of interest are open. 13 of our golf courses are also open for business, and 16 out of our 17 casinos are generating significant revenues that are helping our university and also helping us develop our destination, with 180 shore excursions available for our cruise passengers. So when you put all that into context, that's where we are today. But what's our real opportunity? And our opportunity lies in that plan that inspired me to come back was the inspiration also for a recovery plan for the destination. There's federal funds that will be assigned to it, and in the next 10 years, Puerto Rico is going to receive about $100 billion in cash for infrastructure and to build back better. We're an opportunity zone, and if you don't know what an opportunity zone, I encourage you to Google that. It will allow us to tap into investors that want to invest in Puerto Rico in exchange for tax-free capital gains for 10 years. And there's so much frozen capital that could be put into motion in places that need it the most. All of Puerto Rico, as a jurisdiction, is an opportunity zone, unlike other jurisdictions in the US. And at the heart of all of that is the visitors economy, because it's not just about tourism. It's about everything that comes about when visitors come to Puerto Rico. It's about investors. It's about those people coming from groups and conventions. We're impacting agriculture, manufacturing, and so many other sectors of the economy, like very few economic activities are able to do. So with all of that in mind, we're starting to think of how we can seize this opportunity to build a next generation tourism industry. As my boss, the governor, likes to say, we have a blank canvas. It's a blank canvas, and we get to build stronger than ever before. So I'll talk to you about some of the elements that come into play. First is I'll ask you, is there such a thing as bad publicity? The reality is that before the hurricane, people would confuse us with Costa Rica. Costa Rica and Puerto Rico, the same thing. San Jose, San Juan, no one figured us out. In addition to that, no one knew we were a US territory, that we're US citizens, and that you don't need a passport to travel to Puerto Rico, that we're a nonstop flight away from a lot of the major US cities. Nobody knew that. And while we are in the place in consumers' minds that we don't want to be for very long, we're in their minds. And we weren't before. So now we need to see how we can convert all of that increased awareness into motivation for travel. And remember Act 17 of 2017? It's now a reality, and it's called Discover Puerto Rico. It's our new DMO that will take care of marketing. And as of July 1st, Discover Puerto Rico is operational. We helped them in that transition period, those first 3 months, but they're full swing, moving ahead. And we now get to have a permanent brand that will be developed in the coming months and a permanent marketing strategy to leverage that increased awareness and actually get people to travel to Puerto Rico. So I'll wrap this up by saying now government gets to do its job, plan accordingly, manage the destination accordingly, and that partnership is unlike anything you're seeing anywhere in the world. On top of that, we have nonprofit organizations that are working in grassroots, like Foundation for Puerto Rico, that Skift is now committed to, working with the communities, helping them provide business support, provide marketing support. That 30% of our room inventory that is getting remodeled, it's going to allow us to present a fully new face to the world. And on top of that, we have a robust development pipeline. 1,500 rooms are currently being built. That's 4,000 jobs in the construction business, just in hospitality. We're opening an A-loft in the district that's going to change the face of San Juan. It's an entertainment venue, just like LA Live, Four Seasons, Gallo Largo, and so many other hotels being built. So ladies and gentlemen, that is Puerto Rico. That's where we've been, that's where we are, and that's where we're going. And we're excited about our future. We are excited about the opportunities. And we recognize that we've been on everyone's minds, and we appreciate all the support from the travel and tourism industry. But now the best way to support Puerto Rico is actually by realizing that we have a big opportunity, we have a blank canvas, and the visitors economy and tourism is right at the forefront of those rebuilding plans. We are excited. I am inspired. I'm still as inspired as I was that December 2016 that I decided to come on board. And I can't wait to see how we build a new and innovative tourism economy, a visitors economy. So I hope you join us. I hope you visit us. I hope you invest in Puerto Rico, and that you start seeing Puerto Rico with the eyes that we are seeing it. Thank you very much.